The moment he stepped outside, Marcus noticed something wasn't right, but he had no idea how much his life was about to change. Marcus Taylor had always loved his quiet suburban property in Oak Ridge Hills. A middle-aged black man in his 40s, Marcus worked as a software engineer by day, but his true sanctuary was the 5-acre plot of land he'd inherited from his grandfather decades ago. The old oak trees, the gentle slope of the hills, and the tiny creek that meandered through the property made it a haven from the chaos of modern life. He spent weekends tending to the land, planting flowers, and occasionally riding his vintage motorcycle along the winding paths. Neighbors often complimented him, not just for the beauty of his property, but for the calm, grounded presence he brought to the neighborhood. But one Friday morning in early spring, as the sun cast golden light over the tree line, Marcus noticed something unusual, the faint hum of construction equipment where there shouldn't have been any. Curious and a bit concerned, he walked toward the sound, coffee in hand. At the edge of his property, his jaw nearly dropped. Towering scaffolding and half-built luxury homes marred the familiar landscape. Brand new, modern mansions, with slick glass windows, marble facades, and landscaped gardens, were rising from the very land Marcus had grown up on. His land. His property. Heart-pounding, Marcus ran toward the site. No workers turned to him, they simply continued their work, speaking in hurried tones, pretending nothing was wrong. Then a voice called out from a white SUV parked near the road. It was a woman, clipboard in hand, looking every bit the part of someone in charge. "Sorry, sir. You can't be here. This is private property now," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What do you mean?" "This is my land." Marcus snapped, incredulous. She shrugged. "Not anymore. The HOA acquired this section years ago. It's all approved. You're just out of the loop." Marcus felt like the ground had vanished beneath him. Out of the loop. Out of the loop. He had been paying property taxes for years. He had deeds, surveys, and documents that proved the land was his. But as he looked at the gleaming mansions rising on his property, a cold realization set in: no one here seemed willing to listen to him. The HOA, his supposedly neighborly homeowners association, had made a move that seemed impossible. Yet Marcus was not the type to back down. He had inherited a legacy of resilience from his grandfather, a man who had faced challenges head-on. And if these people thought they could bulldoze over him, they were about to discover just how wrong they were. Marcus rushed back to his house, documents in hand, determined to prove the truth, but the HOA had already started building, and their next move would shock him even more. Every document Marcus pulled from his safe revealed a new betrayal, and a shocking loophole that could either save his land or destroy him. Back in the quiet of his home office, Marcus spread out every piece of paper he had ever received about his property, the original deed from his grandfather, updated tax records, surveys, and even correspondence with the county. The weight of reality pressed on him. Somehow, despite decades of ownership, the HOA had acted as if they owned his land. He opened the deed. His eyes scanned the text line by line, and there it was, the legal lifeline he had been hoping for. The land was still officially in his name. Every survey, every notarized signature, every tax receipt reinforced the truth: this was his property, and no HOA or developer had the right to build on it without his consent. But the problem was far from solved. The HOA had leveraged a gray area in local property law to begin construction. They claimed that a lapsed covenant allowed them to annex portions of land not actively maintained, even though Marcus had meticulously cared for every inch. Marcus knew he needed help, and fast. He called his old friend, Angela Morales, a sharp, tenacious real estate attorney who had once helped him navigate a messy neighbor dispute over property boundaries. "Angela, they're building luxury homes on my land," Marcus said, his voice tight with frustration. "They're acting like I'm the intruder here." Angela didn't hesitate. "Send me everything, Marcus. We're going to put a stop to this before they finish one brick." Hours turned into days as they pored over every legal angle. Marcus discovered that the HOA had made several administrative errors in their filings, errors that left them vulnerable. Missed deadlines, improper notices, and falsified claims of ownership provided a rare window of opportunity. Marcus also began documenting the construction itself. He photographed the ongoing work, recorded conversations with construction workers, and even discreetly obtained videos showing HOA representatives instructing builders without showing proof of legitimate ownership. Every piece of evidence became ammunition. But the HOA wasn't going to sit idly by. One afternoon, Marcus received a threatening letter from their lawyer, warning him to cease interference or face severe legal consequences. His stomach churned, but he refused to back down. If anything, the threat strengthened his resolve. He knew the stakes weren't just about property, they were about standing up to a system that assumed he could be intimidated. Marcus realized that to win, he would have to expose the HOA's overreach in a way no one could ignore. As Marcus prepared to confront the HOA legally, he discovered something even more shocking buried in the HOA's filings, a secret plan to sell portions of his land to luxury developers behind his back. And this revelation would change everything. When Marcus walked into the HOA office, he thought he was prepared, but nothing could have readied him for what they had planned. The morning sun filtered through the blinds as Marcus tightened the straps on his briefcase. Today, he would face the HOA head-on. Angela had prepared a stack of legal documents, photographs, and notarized statements, enough to make the board sweat. The HOA headquarters was a sleek, modern office building just a few miles from Marcus's property. Walking in, he felt a surge of determination. Every step echoed the resolve he inherited from his grandfather, a man who had fought hard for what was rightfully his. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and corporate power. The receptionist gave him a polite nod. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm here to speak with the board regarding the construction on my property," Marcus said firmly. Minutes later, he was seated across from the HOA president, Margaret Whitmore, a woman in her 50s with a sharp bob haircut and an expression that radiated authority. Beside her sat two attorneys, their posture rigid, eyes scanning every move Marcus made. "Mr. Taylor," Margaret said smoothly, "we understand you have concerns. But legally, we have acted within our rights." Marcus set his briefcase on the table and opened it, spreading the evidence before them. Photographs, emails, property surveys, all lined up neatly like a weapon in a courtroom. Angela spoke next, her voice calm but cutting. "The HOA has no legal ownership of Mr. Taylor's land. Any construction without his consent constitutes trespassing and unauthorized development. You are operating outside the law." Margaret's smile faltered, but she quickly regained composure. "We have documentation suggesting that Mr. Taylor neglected portions of his property, allowing the HOA to annex them." Marcus leaned forward, his voice steady but charged. "That is false. I maintain every inch of my property. The only neglect is on your side, for assuming you could override ownership with false claims." Tension filled the room like a storm about to break. Margaret's attorneys shuffled papers, and whispers passed between board members. Marcus sensed the cracks forming in their confidence. Then came the bombshell. Angela held up a document she had uncovered just hours before, an internal HOA email outlining plans to secretly sell parts of Marcus's land to developers for luxury homes, bypassing any legal process. Margaret paled, and the room went silent. There was no way to explain away an internal memo detailing illegal intentions. Marcus leaned back, letting the weight of the evidence settle over them. "You thought you could take what's mine," Marcus said, his eyes locked on Margaret. "But I've got proof. And now, everyone will know exactly what you tried to do." The room remained silent, tension thick in the air, but outside, construction continued. Marcus knew this confrontation had bought him only time. The next battle would be in court, and it would be a fight that could change everything. Marcus thought he was prepared, but the HOA had one last trick that could destroy him before the gavel even fell. The morning of the hearing, Marcus stood outside the county courthouse, clutching his briefcase like a shield. A crowd had gathered, neighbors curious about the unusual dispute, reporters drawn by whispers of a land battle gone public. Cameras flashed as Marcus and Angela entered the building, their footsteps echoing off marble floors. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. The HOA had assembled a team of high-powered attorneys, their expressions cold and calculated. Margaret Whitmore sat confidently at the front, smiling as if victory were already hers. But Marcus knew better. The hearing began with opening statements. Margaret's lawyer attempted to frame Marcus as a negligent landowner, arguing that his lack of active oversight somehow justified the HOA's actions. He spoke smoothly, citing regulations and technicalities, but Marcus and Angela were ready. When it was Marcus's turn, Angela presented a meticulously organized case. Original deed and updated property tax records, proving Marcus's ownership. Photographs and video evidence of the construction, showing the HOA's disregard for property boundaries. Internal HOA emails, revealing the secret plan to sell Marcus's land to developers. Witness statements from neighbors confirming Marcus's active maintenance and care of the property. The courtroom murmured as Angela laid out the evidence. Margaret's smug expression faltered, replaced by unease. But the HOA had one last card to play. Their lead attorney introduced a binding clause they claimed existed in the neighborhood's founding documents, a clause supposedly granting the HOA the right to annex unused or neglected land. Marcus's heart sank for a split second. The clause sounded convincing, but Angela had anticipated it. She stood and addressed the judge. Your Honor, the HOA's claim is based on a document that has never been properly recorded or enforced according to county law. Moreover, Mr. Taylor has consistently maintained his property. Any attempt to invoke this clause is not only legally invalid, it's a deliberate attempt to override his ownership for profit. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. Marcus watched Margaret's confidence begin to crumble. For the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. Then, the climax of the day arrived. Angela presented the bombshell evidence, emails showing that HOA board members had intentionally misrepresented property boundaries and planned to profit from selling Marcus's land without his consent. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Margaret's face turned red. She attempted to speak, but the judge raised a hand. This evidence is compelling. We will need a full review before any further construction is allowed. Marcus exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. He wasn't out of the fight yet, but for the first time, it seemed like justice might finally be on his side. As the courtroom emptied, Marcus received a tip that the HOA was planning one final desperate move, something that could bypass the court entirely. To save his land, he would need to act fast. The HOA thought they could outsmart him, but Marcus had one last move that would leave them powerless. That evening, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, reviewing the tip he had received earlier. The HOA was planning an emergency, fast-track sale of parts of his land to developers, bypassing the court entirely. If they succeeded, the luxury homes could be sold before the judge even ruled. He felt the familiar surge of determination. This was his land. His family's legacy. And he would not let it slip through the cracks. Marcus and Angela sprang into action. They drafted an emergency injunction, demanding the court halt all construction and sales immediately. Within hours, the injunction was filed. Marcus also reached out to local news outlets, ensuring the public knew about the HOA's secretive and illegal actions. The next morning, a swarm of reporters gathered outside Marcus's property. Helicopters hovered above as news crews broadcast live footage of the half-built mansions. Marcus stood in front of his oak tree, the sunlight glinting off his glasses, facing the cameras with quiet confidence. People need to know, he said firmly. This is my land. I've maintained it for decades, and no one has the right to take it from me. Inside the courtroom, the judge reviewed the emergency injunction. The HOA tried to object, but the combination of legal documents, photographs, internal emails, and public scrutiny left them with no ground to stand on. The judge temporarily halted all construction and ordered a full investigation into the HOA's actions. Margaret Whitmore and her board members were stunned. Their plan to quietly annex and sell Marcus's land had been exposed to the world. Panic and whispers filled the office. The luxury developers, realizing the legal storm they were walking into, withdrew their plans immediately. In the weeks that followed, Marcus worked with Angela to finalize the legal battle. The court officially ruled in his favor, reaffirming his ownership and ordering the HOA to cease all unauthorized activities. The HOA was also held accountable for damages and legal costs. But for Marcus, the victory was more than just legal, it was deeply personal. Standing on his land, watching the sun set behind the hills, he felt a profound sense of justice and peace. He had faced intimidation, deception, and greed, and had emerged stronger than ever. Neighbors came by to congratulate him, shaking his hand and marveling at his resilience. Even those who had doubted him now understood, Marcus Taylor would not be silenced, and no one could take what was rightfully his. The land remained untouched, a testament to perseverance, justice, and the unwavering truth. Sometimes, standing firm is the only way to protect what you love.